Hello, everyone, and we're here on another day with green all over the fall summit for Path of Ish. I'm Marita Steva, one who catches lightning, your host this whole week. We are talking about zero waste and the elemental body, and who better to speak about zero waste than the zero waste chica? So we know your name is not just zero waste chica; it is
Heidi.
Heidi.
Hello.
Welcome, Heidi. How are you? How are you? So
Good.
good. I'm so happy for you to be on and excited. I've seen your work online on Instagram and also, of course, on that amazing performance presentation that you gave a month ago or so. I don't even remember. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Time flies, doesn't it? And
Yeah, seriously.
and apparently my hair as well. So I don't know what's going on. So Heidi, let's just kind of jump into it. Why don't you just give us kind of a quick bio, who you are, how you came to become Zero Waste Chica?
Sure. So I started, I guess, like the Instagram last year, and it was initially just a way for me to share my lifestyle with friends and a few other people that were interested in small like tips on how to reduce their waste. And then from there, it grew into this crazy, huge thing. And it's amazing that so many people are interested and tuning in. And it's helped me also learn from the community in different ways. Because everyone lives a different lifestyle, so it's really just been a really amazing learning process, and yeah, just a lot of like sharing back and forth, I guess.
Now, your journey to zero waste didn't start with Instagram. It started before, right?
Yes, it started maybe like 2 years before, and it turned into Instagram because I had a friend that had a baby, and she wanted a like physical record of the stuff that I did to minimize waste because she wanted to bring her baby into a better world, basically. So yeah, it was all because of her. But it started about 2 years before Instagram.
What does zero waste mean to you?
For me, zero waste is it's a mindset. It's um, being intentional with everything that you purchase, everything you consume, the way you look at things. I think for me, I used to be a very single use type of person. And I bought whatever was trendy and things of that sort. So zero waste for me meant completely changing the way that I think about things and I look at things. And it's sort of trying to give things a bigger life than what we're conditioned to think that they're meant to have.
Conditioning. So we are conditioned to single-use society. My grandfather called it white man's magic. And my mother thought it
Yeah.
was always like the thing to do to be a housekeeper.
Yeah.
Um, uh, she graduated, I think, high school, she was given an etiquette book. This is, of course, in Mexico, back in Mexico.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was an etiquette book that would tell you not just how to use things, but like how you had to serve certain things, and it's a different world. So she came to the States and discovered a microwave, and that was interesting. But let's talk about consumption.
Yeah.
Let's talk about consumption and not just historical, but familial. Uh, we both have a Latin history, and I know we've kind of talked about that before. But how did your parents look at consuming items and things such as corn?
Well, corn was really the center of my family's upbringing. They were raised on a corn farm, and it wasn't what it is today. And even for them, sometimes, we talked about this, and it's interesting to me how quickly one forgets, like, your roots and how meaningful something once was to you. Before the corn, it signified everything. Not only was it food, but like the husk, they used that as toilet paper. My mom would make dolls out of it. They used the corn cob to make broth. That was like emergency toilet paper. It was a fire starter. And then the corn itself, that was, tortillas, that was tamales, that was bread, that was, part of the salad or salsa, whatever it may be. They had to find so many ways to make that one ear of corn go so far because they had such an abundance of it. But at the same time, it took so much work and so much resources to create that corn. So it had to have more than one purpose. It couldn't signify what it is now, where you go to the store and you like shuck it there, you leave the husk there, and then you bring the corn home, you just eat the kernels and everything else goes in the trash. Like that was unheard of for them. However, they do that now, which is crazy to me. But yeah, before, for them, consumption, it was, you had to make everything have multiple purposes. It was, buying something and having it be single use was unheard of.
Was unheard of because it was a single use and all that energy had gone into it, right? So what I do like is I like how you talked about the resources that go into actually creating the corn, are and that connection to Mother Earth. Are there any other things around the house that your mother talked about that had that connection?
We're still very vain. They still are. But for like eyeliner, they would use like the wood ash, and they would get that wet, and that would be their eyeliner. Their blush would be the powder from bricks. Lipstick would be kind of what the DIYs are now, where it's like berries, and you crush them up and you use that lip tint color. But a lot of it had to be things that you find around the house or you find out in nature, because they didn't have access to a store like we do here now. So she'll talk to me often about, for deodorant, they used lemon slices, things of that sort, because it's just, you have to use whatever is nearby.
Lemon slices for a deodorant. I've never tried that. I gotta try that out before. So it kind of seems that, as I'm looking at my notes, um, their connection to Mother Earth was a necessity to be able to use what she gave them, because they didn't, as you said, have a store or easy access. But I feel that there's kind of now in our culture, kind of a return to Mother Nature, not out of necessity, but more of a connection, to create more of a connection with her. Is that why you kind of embarked on this kind of zero waste lifestyle?
Absolutely. It was funny because it sort of happened by accident. My mom was always really uncomfortable with me being zero waste. It didn't dawn on me until like way later to ask her why. She would come over and she'd be really disheartened by the way we were living, and I'd ask her to please not bring disposables, and she would always just like sigh and shake her head, and she seemed really disappointed in what Diego and I were doing. And it finally dawned on me to ask her why it was that my lifestyle offended her so much. And that's when she brought up that it reminded her of her childhood and how they struggled to make things last and make things work. And that's when we kind of had a really great talk. But it sort of made me come to the realization that all this stuff that I was trying to do, she already did. And so she was just this wealth of knowledge that I had no idea I could tap into. And so, even by bringing certain things up to her, I think it sort of helped her honor her past, because she was really ashamed of it. And I think sort of empowering that aspect for her, especially when people started to be interested, like loofahs. I still used like, I have like a little cottony sponge that I wash, like a washcloth. But she was telling me about loofahs and how they would grow the loofah gourds, and they would cut it up, and that's what the sponge they used to wash the dishes, to wash the floors, to wash their bodies, and like that was just your everything sponge. Things like that, and it didn't dawn on me like, oh, I can grow a loofah gourd and do the same thing. But little things like that, I think sort of having even people on Instagram ask me things to ask her made her feel like, like strong and like she had something to contribute. She doesn't, of course, doesn't realize, zero waste movement and what's going on with that in the media. But just being able to have that open conversation with her, I think really enforced my passion for this, but also for her to kind of even tap into those things a little bit. I went to her house the other day, and instead of that plastic sponge, now she has loofah gourds. So just kind of trying to, help people realize that the way that they, were brought up, has a lot of value nowadays.
Mhm. So the zero waste has connected you back to your family in a way.
Absolutely. I think we spent one weekend like camping and we were eating corn and I asked her to show me how, the dolls that they would make, and my dad to show me the little cars they would make. And that took like a couple hours, and everyone was like having a blast looking for like berries to decorate the doll's hair and things like that. And so it was just really nice to sort of see a glimpse of their childhood.
Wow, that's amazing. Now you told me uh, once the germination time for a loofah, it was like ridiculous amount. Usually, how long does
Yes.
let's just put it into
Uh,
perspective here for people. So
Yes. So it's I want to say it was like 140 or 160 days. So we have a plant that's massive, but it has no loofah gourds yet. And we have like the little flowers, but no gourds yet. So I mean, it takes a while. And I think that's also why like one loofah gourd had to have, it had to be 50 sponges you had to get out of that, because you can't wait that long in between, right?
yeah. So you're growing your own loofah. I love that. So
Yeah.
so your connection to that loofah will be very different from one that you can just kind of maybe buy on Amazon and get, shipped to you.
Absolutely. And it's really funny. Diego and I we just have, he mentioned the other day, he's like, even when our parents give us like fruit and vegetables from their garden, it has such a bigger meaning now because we're starting to grow our own fruits and vegetables. So we understand like how much water it takes, and we have to get up early in the morning to be able to water them. And then there's bugs, and I got to make my own like plant spray because I want it to be organic. And, what fertilizer are we using? And I'm saving all my coffee grounds, and we're making our own compost and things like that, and the ratios, and there's just so much that goes into it that you don't think about until you start doing it. And then you're like, wow, that peach they gave me isn't just a peach, that's like, however long of energy and work. So it gives everything so much more meaning.
Yeah, we just had some late, really late blooming strawberries, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I was outside. I was like, "I can't believe this!" I woke up one morning and it was like still green, and so I waited all day until it got like ready to pick, and oh my God, it was so delicious.
That's awesome. We haven't done strawberries yet, but I really want to. I like hear they're a little tricky though.
Encouraging people to grow their own food. I mean, even like a small herb garden is a way for people to connect to Mother Earth.
Yeah. And
Yep.
sort of see the I think the process from start to beginning, because even then it for us it's given us a deeper sense of when we go to the grocery store and we buy something. It's easy to go there and just buy it, but then what that farmer had to go through to put that in the produce aisle for you. So then you're trying to save the scraps and make different things with every part of it. I just made a pineapple salsa, and everyone, I had all these messages afterwards, because you just see like me chopping up pineapple and they're like, what did you do with the rinds though? Did you juice them? And I'm like, no, I'm making vinegar. But it was just awesome that people, even like they're like, did you replant like the top of the pineapple? And it's just awesome to see people like thinking of the bigger picture rather than just the stuff you think has value.
So consuming fruits and vegetables is a way that we can connect to Mother Earth, or growing them. Is there another way that we can connect to Mother Earth with our bodies?
I think you mean like what we're putting on and in our body.
Yeah, or even just elemental. There's been a lot of people talking this week about how the body is a representation of Mother Earth, how we are made of her, kind of that kind of line of questioning or process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times, you hear, you have to be mindful of what you put on and in your body, but I think it's also um, people have to be mindful of what they're kind of like surrounding themselves with. I started zero waste actually through like essential oils because I wanted to like DIY my own products, and then that's when it dawned on me like, oh wow, I'm buying like 12 different products in plastic bags to make a lotion, because I want to be better for the environment. But then where are my 12 plastic bags going back into the environment. So in a sense, it's, if you think of your body the same as Mother Earth, it's like, what are you putting on and into her? And I think that's also what makes us very mindful in our household of what we purchase, what we bring into the house. I always tell people, when you, before you buy something, look at it and ask yourself, how long is this, how long is the life that I'm going to give this object, and where does it end up at the end of its life? And I think a lot of that is what people talk about, with the landfills and all the trash that gets sent there. It's like, that's what we're putting into Mother Earth. That's what we're putting, and it recycles back, right? Because then you're eating all the plants from the soil. People always talk about the soil is the soul of the planet. Well, what are you putting into that soul?
So we're eating our own garbage in a way, our own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So zero waste is a mindset, and the way that you talk about how it is about honoring the lifetime of not just an object, but a being, like a plant or corn or anything like that. How else is zero waste a mindset other than just objects?
I think it's, well, for me at least, I try to apply it in my everyday life. Like, I try not to waste my time. I try not to waste my health. I try not to waste the connections that I have around me. I think for me, it's really given me a more enriched life, because I try to apply the things that I think about when I consume something to, how I consume my time. So I think when you think about it in that broad spectrum, it's sort of like, well, okay, I'm like at home making kombucha and reusing things, but then how am I giving back any of that to the community, or, to my friends? And so it becomes sort of this like emphasis of my life as a whole. And I think that sometimes people think zero waste is just about the trash, and I think it's so much bigger than that. It's sort of like, what kind of energy are you putting back into the planet, um, because if you think about it, like zero waste, you don't want to really waste any aspect of what you're doing here, right? It can't just be about trash, because then, just don't buy anything and then you don't make any trash. I don't know. I think it's just there's a bigger spectrum.
Yeah, it's not just again, the act of doing, because if you're just doing, it's another form of consuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a way,
Exactly.
and you're stuck in that cycle of, I'm going to use this, I'm going to consume it as an action without the thought, and reflecting on how it affects, everything in totality, as well as kind of your local community. Speaking of local communities, it seems that to be effectively zero waste, you have to get involved in your community and your surroundings, right? So because of the carbon footprint, you don't want to be as traveling as much and things like that. So how has zero waste allowed you to get involved in your communities?
So it's funny. I don't really talk about community stuff online, but community service and just getting involved with local folks is huge to my faith, to my lifestyle. I think for me, the easiest has been just sort of talking to folks, going and talking to shop owners, restaurant owners, even our like little chamber of commerce. I harassed our poor Recology folks forever, and we finally got composting curbside. I think it's just kind of making people aware that there's a different way to do things. Even if it's something like you're, talking to your coffee shop about getting reusable mugs, or we had our baker. They're amazing, but they had all these olive trees, and they were making olive oil that they used to make their baked goods. But I asked them, why don't you guys sell or give like the olive tree leaves, because that tea is really healthy? And they were like, oh, we didn't really look into that. And now they're like making all these products with it, and it has all these like health benefits that people don't really think, but now they serve it, if you buy like a snack there, they'll serve the tea there with it. And just little things like that. I think sometimes folks, because they're so consumed in, their everyday like work schedule and stuff, they don't see that like little changes can actually have a huge effect. Even, small things like reusable bags at the farmers market. I There's an Instagram account that I adore, Zero Waste Chef, and she made produce bags that she was going to start handing out at the farmers market. So then people could have reusable bags to use at the farmers market. So we were talking to our farmers market people about doing something similar, or even like the little Latino shop, that Latino supermercado that we have nearby. Like, we're just notorious for using so much plastic. I'll go with my mom and she'll buy like a little plastic bag of chilies, and then she puts that in a plastic produce bag, and then when she pays for it they put it in like another plastic grocery bag. Like, why does this like chili need so much protection from the, what's going on? So even bringing up to them like produce bags, and talking to them, you can like, put your logo on it or whatever, use it for marketing purposes, just little things like that. I think a lot of times it's a conversation can like, have this spiral effect for bigger change.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. You'll have to come over to Bolinas and help us out here. But
Yay!
so I live in a pretty isolated town, so kind of far away. So I have to, buy local when I'm around here. So I want to kind of jump into that, buy local, and buying that makes me buy seasonal. We have a little farm stand, 24-hour farm stand, which is great. You just like it's open again 24 hours. You can just leave money and write down what you're taking, and it's all on a honor system. But that's local, but it also changes with the season. So I can't get my strawberries in the winter. I have to get them now in September. But anyways, let's just jump into supporting local community, because it makes you buy and consume in a different way to support your local community than to go to kind of those big box stores, because that means that you're not going to buy something in a box that's in a box that's in a box, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that there's way more resources than we think. I'm still constantly finding little things in my area. Like, I recently found like a white sage plant that a man, this like little couple, they propagate their own plants and then sell them. And so it was like a white sage plant. And I love smudging. So, but it's way more eco-friendly to make my own smudge sticks and not contribute to the over harvesting of sage. So even little things like that, realizing that, um, you know, farmers markets are always the best option. However, there are small shops that usually carry local produce. We found a little farmer who sells like all his imperfect produce out of his barn every like Saturday morning. So we go and buy all his ugly tomatoes, which are still amazing. Freezing has been our best friend. During the summer, we freeze so much. We freeze all the fruits and stuff so then we can still have them during the winter. And it's also realizing that a lot of the off-season fruits and veggies don't have a lot of nutritional value because they have to put in so many chemicals to grow them that at the end their nutritional value is way lower than stuff that is in season that can grow organically. So it's just really sort of like getting out there and figuring out what your community has to offer. I think a lot of times it's just like mom and pop places that have most of it. And like for us, we find it just like walking around or word of mouth. But it really makes a huge difference for us in the kitchen and in the stuff that we use at home.
So I loved that you just said word of mouth, because that's a lot of what it is. I go down to my little local hardware store where I also buy candles and other things because it's an amazing store and I love it. But um, you have to talk, you have to ask, you have to engage instead of Googling everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a commitment to zero waste is a commitment to get out of your shell,
Mm-hmm.
out of your kind of protected ideas and ask for help.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure it out, it's kind of, as we're talking, this is what's coming to me. So for those people who are scared of zero waste, so what are the tips that you have for people where they can start small. It's hard to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. I mean, some people do that, but what are those small steps that you can give us, that you can help us with, so that people can start on this journey?
So I love that you said that, because that's a question I get a lot online, is people saying like, I'm afraid to, ask someone to tear my jar, or if I can put something in my reusable bag. And especially for someone like me, I'm actually like super shy about those things, which is probably why this is like my first interview ever. I always, hide my face online, and um, it's it is scary, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. I think the first time I got peanut butter in my own jar, I was like gonna pass out. I was ready to give the man just like $20 so he wouldn't have to like weigh it or anything. I was just like, just take the money and let me go. I think to start off, you have to accept the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable. It's just going to happen. Anytime you ask someone to go out of their way or do something that you don't deem normal, it's going to feel awkward. So I always like to, go into the store with the pretense like, all right, this is going to suck. But at the end of it, it's like, you want to stick to your guns, and you, most of the time, people don't even realize that what you're doing is an option, and like they end up loving it. So for me, like I ended up asking a salesperson first. When I brought my little jar to get peanut butter, I went up to the salesperson first. And so what, before you get the courage to just do, and you don't ask permission and you ask forgiveness later. I asked for permission before, because I'm just not that type of person to do something and then be like, whatever the consequences. So I'll ask somebody. So I think the first step would be to find someone that seems, nice at the store, and sort of engage them in a conversation. Be like, hey, like, I brought my own bags. Do you think I could, put the items in here and buy them this way? Do you think that'd be annoying? And so I genuinely start a small conversation with someone at the shop first, see kind of how they feel about it. Sometimes, they'll say, oh, you can't, rules, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, okay, well, what do you suggest is a way that I can, avoid using these plastics? Do I need to just buy everything loose? Like, I want to, I don't want to make it harder on you guys, but I'm really just trying to avoid plastic. Sometimes once they gave me little paper bags, which was really awesome, like from the bakery, and they're like, oh, just put them in here and then you can just reuse them. But I think the biggest tip is yeah, just starting a conversation. And I think the next one is come with a friend, bring backup. I always have Diego with me in case things get awkward. He can step in. He's more extroverted than I am. And I think also just kind of asking people online, finding a community online to help you. I just had someone ask me, they're like, oh, I had someone send me a gift and it was paper napkins. How can I kindly remind them that this is not part of, my lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. So we were like brainstorming a nice conversation to send that individual. So I think small things like that, it's really about not feeling alone, because when you are standing there in front of the deli person asking them to put something in your container, you feel really awkward and alone. So I think the biggest thing I can say is just find a support system, even if it's online.
Wow. So, I mean, it's going to take time, right? So people have to
Mhm.
have patience, you know?
Yes.
So it's almost like, you talked about how zero waste is also not wasting time, but it's using time in a different way, right? It's acknowledging that things take time to grow. We take time to change, and learning it will be a process. So to have grace and compassion. Now, you spoke, and I remember the first time we spoke, you said that people always ask you why you got into zero waste, but now not why you continue. And I know you've brought up spirituality and faith, so let's dive into that. So where yeah, just tell me about it.
Yeah, so I am pretty faith-based. I am God-fearing. And I think the major reason why I continue at it, especially on days where it gets really difficult, and I'm like, I look at Diego, I'm like, whatever, let's just buy all the garbage. Um, the reason why I continue with it is because of God. I feel like, we were given this amazing oasis. We were giving so much. This world is beautiful. It's endless. There's so much, so much bounty to it. What are we doing to say thank you? And for me, it's just trying to honor God, and hopefully find ways to make him proud of me. I always tell Diego, at the end of my life, I want to be able to stand before him and say, you know, I used up every bit of talent you gave me. I have nothing left. So I think that also fuels me in trying to help others, and trying to be supportive of everyone in whatever, their walk is, whatever point they are in the zero waste journey, or just in life. I have some people that reach out and just want to talk, and that's perfectly fine as well. And I think that's the biggest driving force for me, is just being appreciative of what I've been giving, of the land, of the animals, of the resources, and not taking any of it for granted.
So your faith allows you to dive in deeper and see that connection of spirit, the spirit that's in water, the spirit that's in Mother Earth, and not take advantage of that. I think that's beautiful, and I think it helps people to see it as a whole, right? Instead of, again, compartmentalize things. And that's kind of what this whole week is about, is to get people out of their maybe comfort zones, or challenge them to say, like, okay, what is zero waste? It's a movement, or a lot of people are trending towards veganism, and they're calling it a fad. I'm plant-based. One of the reasons I do it is because I don't support a lot of how we are harvesting animals and treating them. And so that connection, I think, is important. And I think many times it's still not one that people are making, and they're going online. I know, remember you were telling me, there's, people love, you posted once, one of your posts that got a lot of replies was all glassware, like this glassware that you had, you were reusing. Like, I think there was a beautiful tequila bottle, and there was some other beautiful bottles, and people were like, where can I buy that? And you're like, no.
Always.
And that's the funny thing, right? So, like, talk to me about all the people that ask you, like, I want to be zero waste, but how can I buy it? I mean, that's kind of oxymoron right there, right? But how do you kind of talk to those people, and how can you kind of inspire us to understand that we have what we need here?
I think one of the biggest issues I actually have with zero waste and what's going on with it in the media with the term is that it often gets associated with how much you have to purchase in order to be zero waste. Or some of the items are, crazy expensive, when their alternatives are free or super cheap, but not a lot of big accounts are talking about that. And I get it, people, want to make money, and I understand all of that. However, I think that it's crucial to also give people the other option, because not everyone can afford, an $80 giant tiffin for freezing food. I had a few people ask me, they're like, oh, I didn't realize you could freeze jars. I'm like, absolutely, you can freeze glass, and I was trying to explain to them, the best kinds of, like, jars you can use. I'm like, this one, the pasta sauce jars, and blah, blah, blah. So I think the biggest thing for zero waste that I hear is just that people look at something and only see one thing. So I think it's sort of trying to, like I said earlier, trying to find a second life for a lot of items. Like I actually just got this candle because it's citronella, and we have a lot of mosquitoes right now. But look at this little jar, like, it's awesome. So afterwards, we'll probably use this, like, as a water cup or whatever. But certain things like that, I always, ask people, I'm like, well, what are you using now for that item? And they'll show me, and I'm like, oh, well, that can be a vase, or that can be your compost bin, or that can be, whatever. And it just doesn't dawn on them that something that they purchased for, just to be sauce can actually be their water glass, or their compost jar, or for freezing. So I think a lot of it is just trying to look outside of what you think something is meant to be, and looking around your house. I always tell Diego, I'm like, oh, like, over this room, I want to redecorate it. So what I end up doing is just shifting things from one room to the other instead of buying new things. And then it all looks brand new anyways because it's in a different place. So it's the same thing with your items. It's that pillowcase can now be your bread buying bag, things of that sort. So usually when people ask me where can I buy that, I ask them, I'm like, well, what are you using for that now? And it's usually, they're like, oh, well, I have this to like hold my toothbrushes, but I want something like this water glass. I'm like, well, why don't you use the water glass you have? I don't know. It's just little things that I think people, it doesn't register with them that they can use it for other purposes as well.
Yeah, since you showed me yours, I'm gonna show you one of mine. This is
Yay.
so this is reused already. It used to be a wine bottle, right? And they cut it down, and then I buy it as a candle, and then this is what we use for glasses. And then I have a tendency of leaving drinks around the house, so I kept the top so flies don't fly in or whatever, and then I can just throw it in the my hot tea can become cold tea, and I can throw it in my fridge. So
That's amazing.
there are.
What is that lid? Is that like a wood lid?
Yeah, it's a wood lid. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so these I think it's like, not that I'm promoting anything right now, but this is where this is one of the things that I get in my little hardware store. But yeah, and
Oh, that's
it even has
awesome.
a seal. It even has a seal. But I remember when I first moved out here, and I didn't have a lot of money to buy a lot of things. I was like, I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to use because you know,
That's amazing.
and
That's what I was telling someone else. I'm like, you end up buying things just because like the container that it's in, you're like, I can reuse that.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's so it, I find this whole zero waste movement kind of a movement back, to origins, to family, to traditions and things like that. I mean, I can take it a little step further, and I grew up in a commune, so we had, a farm and everything like that, and now I have strawberries, so it's kind of returning back to nature. But
Yeah.
um, you're not the only one that has taken this journey. Your husband, you've had to convince him, right? It's not like you can just be zero waste and he's not. So where's he in all of this?
It's funny. He's super supportive of everything, but I think recently he started also eating plant-based with me, and I think that was the biggest shift, especially for not to get stereotypical, but for a Latino man, like in both our families, which are like giant meat eaters, that was huge. And I think it kind of sparked hobbies in him, and it sparked hobbies in me. And I think that's another thing that kind of goes in hand with trying to be more mindful of your resources is you learn new skill sets. So, I'm trying to learn how to like knit and sew and things that, I always thought were, too domestic for me to learn. And now I'm like, I want to make coasters and, mend my pants and things like that. So for him, he started picking up woodworking hobbies, and that sort of helped him become more mindful of how to reuse all of his scraps. So we've been like doing all this like reclaimed wood things. He made rings from wood shavings, and so that sort of showed him the creativity to sort of see it in a broader sense. So I have the newspaper bags that I use as my trash liners. Well, he was the one that thought to do the smaller ones into little pouches that we keep in the car. So for eating like an apple or something, we have the rind instead of using a paper napkin. We put them in like our mini newspaper pouches, and then that can go in the compost. So it's been awesome that we can work off of each other with it, but it was definitely a bit of a process, especially when you're so used to a certain way of life. You feel like you have to cut it off cold turkey. And I think that's where people sort of mess up. That was where I messed up when I started. I was like, oh, I have to buy all these things to be zero waste. And, I can't touch anything that's in plastic. And I went nuts. And then one day I ended up buying like half of the chip aisle because I was like, I was like craving chips, and I was like, whatever, forget it. And I just bought everything. So I think it's just with anything, it takes time. So for him, I think it took him a little bit longer than me to kind of get into the stride of things. But because we did it slowly, because I didn't, nag him or pressure him or make him feel like he had to, it was like his idea to do all these things. So it ended up becoming a habit instead of trying to force something. And then that slowly turned into our routine. And now it's like I don't find anything strange in how we live, but people will come over and like comment on things. They like, you have baskets of hand towels everywhere, and I'm like, oh yeah, because that's for when you wash your hands to dry them. That's a napkin. That's a rag. That's for cleaning the bathroom. And they're like, that's weird, but it doesn't dawn on us that that's weird because that's just become the world we live in.
Now, a lot of people having conversations of, becoming plant-based or becoming zero waste, plant-based. I like that. They don't even want to hear about it because it sounds too preachy, I mean, so how is it that you have those human connections with people that are like, I don't even want to hear it. This is too complicated, and you're just a hippie. I get that a lot. What are the conversations that you have with them that can kind of turn that shift?
I think you can tell kind of early on when someone just wants to argue to argue, and when they want to talk, when they want to argue to like actually learn and have an open dialogue. For us, it's actually helped to not talk about it. So it's really funny because a lot of our friends don't know that we're zero waste until they will come over and they see our house, and then like we'll bring out real plates when we're eating outside, or everyone gets a cloth napkin, or they go into our bathroom and it's like a bidet and there's like a bucket of rags next to it, and they're sort of picking stuff up and they're like, oh, you guys are living this bizarre alternative life. And then and so then we'll sort of start the conversation like, oh yeah, we're just trying to minimize our plastic, blah blah blah. But the thing that's worked for us the most is that we don't talk about it. We just do it. So like, we'll go with them to like an outdoor concert. We'll bring our own picnic basket and our own blanket, and then all the reusables. We'll bring all our plant-based snacks, and they're loving the cheese. And I'm like, that's actually cashews. Or they love the pulled pork, and I'm like, that's also a fruit. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize. And I think at everyone's core, they want to be healthy. They want to be well. But I think when they feel like someone's telling them that everything they're doing is wrong, or that's not the way to get healthy or be well, they get defensive. And I think we figured that out with plastic very early on, because people sort of felt like we were telling them like they were the problem. With mostly with our families, because they would come over and they'd want to have a barbecue with us, and they'd bring bags and bags of of stuff they bought at the store. And at first, like, I was upset and made this big old scene, and it makes people feel like they're not like you're not appreciative of them. So to this day, sometimes my mom will send like a basket of blueberries or something, and it's in a little plastic container. Well, now I know I can give it back to a farmer at the farmer's market, but before, things like that would like set me off. And I think it's sort of being appreciative of anything that anyone gives you, being respectful of their lifestyle, all the while doing your own, but sticking to your guns, so much so that they're almost forced to notice that you're living alternatively. Like, we went to a friend's graduation and I brought everything to make carrot dogs because they were making hot dogs. And a few of them asked to try it, and they were like so surprised that ours were better than theirs. And so it didn't become meat versus anti-meat. It became, oh, yours is way better tasting than mine. I want to have that next time. So I think it's kind of going about it that way, instead of telling people what they can and can't do. It's like convincing them that it was their idea almost.
That's very Latin of you.
Yeah.
Carrot dogs, I love them. My wife made some the other day with some. Oh my God, they were so good. They were so good.
Yeah.
They were delicious. And I was going to ask you about. So again. So this is a movement away from being fast. You can't have fast food. You can't, because there has to be so much intention. So what do you recommend? Everyone's stretched for time these days, and we're living in this fast-paced world. What are some tips for people to slow down, or to make that transition? If everyone's moving at 90 miles per hour, they're not going to stop, to
Yeah.
to smell that rose, or to make that carrot dog, or to investigate. So what's a tip that you can give, or even if it's, a shift or meditation or prayer or anything that, to help people kind of shift or recognize that, um, how time has become this thing that they're stuck in, and they're wasting it in a certain way, because that's the thing. They're like, we don't want to waste time, so I'm going to go 90 miles per hour. But then other things
You
are
miss out on much.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was realizing that change needs to come natural. I think a lot of times with stuff like being plant-based or zero waste, whenever you do any giant shift like that, you think you have to force all these changes at once. And I think the biggest thing for me and for Diego, for it to work for us, is that our lifestyle didn't change. It was like the ingredients changed. So instead of us, eating like pork tamales, we'll make jackfruit tamales. So it's sort of figuring out ways for zero waste or plant-based or whatever you're doing to fit into the schedule you already have. So we still go to outdoor concerts and festivals and do all these things. Everyone thinks like, oh, if you're zero waste, you're going to be a shut-in because, you can't make any trash and trash is everywhere. There's ways around all of that. So we still very much do everything we used to do. We still go camping, we still go hiking, everything. And we just found ways for zero waste and plant-based to fit our lifestyle instead of the other way around. And for people that are going 90 miles an hour, I totally get it. Some days I get really stressed out and don't want to cook anything. I think the thing that's helped me the most is having things that are quick to cook. Like we'll buy in bulk, we'll buy like a soup, one of those like dry soups. So then you just have to throw in like vegetable broth in the soup and it's ready in 5 minutes. There you go, quick meal. I think it's having little like cheats throughout the house. Like in our car, we'll have the little compost bags and handkerchiefs and stuff. So, and like I have like a little zero waste car kit in case I forget something. I have like extra jars and reusable bags or whatever in the trunk. For food, it's having a lot of stuff that's frozen, so then I can just thaw it out and throw it in the microwave or whatever. I think the biggest thing that people freak out about with zero waste and not having any time is food, which is why sometimes I'll post up what we're eating, because I am not a cook. That was one thing that I was very adamant about. I was like, you know what? I'm independent. I'm never going to learn how to cook. I'm never going to learn how to sew. And here I am trying to figure out both. So it's recognizing that every meal doesn't have to take 12 hours to prepare for, it to be delicious. Sometimes it's a quick salad, sometimes it's a sandwich, whatever it may be. So it's having certain like ingredients in your fridge that you can just grab and throw together and make it delicious. It's having, like, we have a bunch of reusable bags right at the door. So it's like, grabbing one on your way out, making that a habit. So then you don't have to, make in your mental to-do list, like, oh, I have to bring my bags and bring my jars and blah, blah, blah. So it's like finding ways for all of that to fit your schedule, whether it's sneaking them in your car, sneaking them in your purse, whatever it may be. So then you don't have to think about it later on.
So kind of like prep time.
Mm-hmm.
Prepping everything. I like
and that does take a little bit of time initially to try to like figure out what you're having like the most trouble with. In the beginning for me it was bags. My friend and I once went to the grocery store, and to like punish ourselves, we're just going to carry out everything, and we bought so much produce, so I'm like putting it in my little hood in the back and putting them in my pouch, and I had like my shirt all the way up. Everyone saw my belly button because like that was a bag, and we were like putting them in our pants. Like it was just ridiculous. So after that, we were like, we need to figure out a way that this does not happen. So then we hide like bags throughout the car. So I think it's just kind of figuring out what your weaknesses are and then finding ways to help yourself in the future to not fall into it, I guess.
I should have seen that. Was that they did a whole taco competition in LA, and the vegan tacos won. Just wanted to put it out there. That's all.
See, it's like, it's as soon as you tell someone like, oh, you can't have meat, you should have this, they're like, no. But you're like, oh, have a bite of whatever I'm having. They're like, that's way better than what I'm having. I'm like, yeah, no animals are killed. Yay.
Well, we're coming down to the last couple, last minute right here. So Thanks for your time. But I wanted to, one last thing, if you could give us some tips for fall. I know fall is upon us. I know you freeze a lot of things, but how are you planning for fall or even for the holidays? I know you make your own holiday ornaments. So in like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of food prep for the winter, a lot of shuffling of clothing, make sure we bring out like all like the warmer stuff or whatever to be ready. I don't own a lot of clothes, so that's never too difficult for us. Um, but also with the holidays, I think it's fun to kind of try to figure out ways to do like natural decor and no zero waste gift wrapping and things like that. And I usually use like Christmas time or the holidays to my advantage and sort of gift people reusables and things that I feel like might help them, be more mindful, more zero wastey. But at the end of the day, I think it's just all about community and support and respect. And I think the biggest takeaway that I can leave people with is just, be supportive of each other, of others. Sometimes I see, negative remarks out there, people that are trying or not living or doing things the way that you are. And like we were talking about, with eating plant-based, like if you come at it from an angle where someone's wrong and you're right, nothing's ever going to change. So I hope with fall and like the new season and the changing, the leaf colors, I think we can all kind of look into ourselves and try to be mindful of that when we talk to other people, or try to live our truths and recognize that it may not be everyone else's.
Well, thank you, Heidi, for taking the time to talk about mindfulness, faith, zero waste, and all of it. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, you can download all of these for an extra little bonus price and get a lot of fun things attached. So stay tuned for more info, and of course, all the info is below. Thank you, Heidi. I will hopefully see you soon. You're
Yeah.
Come over.
I'm gonna come up there and see your strawberries.
Oh, better hurry up then. Well, have a good day, everyone, and blessings to everyone. Be safe.